Good afternoon, everybody. We at CoCoTax are pleased to present Debora Allen from the BART District 1 as BART Director. And I'm glad all of you could join us today. A couple of quick announcements. Our videos are now available on our website. All of the speaker series that we've done and many of the PowerPoints that are attached. So if you wanted a fast reference, you can do that. And you just go to our website, www.cocotax.org. Go to News and Elections 2020. And in the drop-down menu, click on Videos. Our next newsletter will have a direct link to it. You can also find us on YouTube. And in the newsletter, I'll send, again, a link direct to that. But you can also find us by running a search and get to the CoCoTax channel. We would ask you to subscribe to our channel to keep up with our goings on and for easy reference. That will also help us reach out to more people because YouTube, when you reach certain numbers, gives us more benefits and more exposure. And we appreciate that public service. If you need any particular slides from today's presentation, contact Deb Allen. She'll give them to you. We're not going to post her whole presentation online and because it just takes up too much space. And we do have some limitations still. Next up speaker that we will have, we're going to take a short break because this is the week where ballot measures are, deadlines are being filed. Ballot measures are coming in, candidates are busy, and ballot arguments are starting. So Friday, August 21st, Rovi Antonio will speak from the California Apartment Association on legislation regarding landlord-tenant issues and more. And on August 28th, again, a Friday, and these will both be at noon, we'll have a general membership meeting for CoCoTax. So we'd like to hear from everybody. We'd like to see everybody there. And if you're not a member, be a member. We want to hear from everybody. That's about it for me. And so without further ado, again, thank you all for tuning in. See you at the end. And I will now turn this over to our guest speaker, BART Director, District 1, Debora Allen. Take it away, Deb.
Well, thank you, Sue. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to share my screen here real quick. I hope this is going to give you a picture that says State of BART. Yes?
Not yet. And I will tell you, I will take all of the questions on the chat feature. And then when Deb's presentation is ended, because I may get 2 or 3 of the same question, I'll compile them and pose them to her at the end. And if you're not already muted, you will be muted during her presentation. And now we have the State of BART on our screen.
All right. So thank you so much for having me. I brought you the latest updates on the State of BART. This was an entirely different presentation just 5 months ago. But my hope here is to update you on BART and the impacts that COVID-19 have had on us over the last 5 months. Take your questions at the end. We should have plenty of time. And so what is the state of BART? The same state as transit agencies across America. It's in trouble. I mean, let's be honest. It's in trouble, severe financial trouble. And survival actually is now being questioned. So first, a few quick facts about BART, just to kind of set the scenario. This is all well, currently we are running 131 miles of track. We now have 50 stations open. And pre-COVID, we were running about 118 million riders per year, serving 5 counties. So pre-COVID, we had really ambitious plans to rebuild BART underway. But what is rebuilding? That means infrastructure replacement, a critical need of BART as it is approaching its 50th anniversary. We are working on core capacity expansion. station modernization, but rebuilding also means a couple of other things that are not construction related. It means rebuilding the rider experience. This had really declined into a state that was really troublesome. It also means access improvements in getting people to BART, and it also means the organizational structure. So first I'm going to, give you a couple of some of the BART financial facts. I know this is a taxpayer organization, and it's important. I think we have a lot of people in this audience here today that are interested in the numbers. So first of all, the fiscal year 20 budget, which ended last June 30th, was $2.37 billion for 1 year. I think that's a fact that gets often not enough attention at the magnitude of the amount of money that is being spent by this transit agency. And it's very important when we talk about the 9-member governing board that is really at the top of managing that budget. Taxpayer funding had traditionally provided 70% of that budget. Projected budget deficit prior to COVID. This is last January. Our staff projected the next 3 years would have a $125 million hole to fill. Pension and unfunded liabilities are over $1 billion. We're not sure what will happen with, the markets that went down, went back up. We'll see what that impact is, but I have Rusty on the line, so I'm sure that it's in good hands, at least for Contra Costa. But BART actually is a CalPERS member, so we rely on CalPERS for our pension management. The BART operating reserves prior to COVID were $75 million. That isn't enough to cover really only less than 2 months worth of operating expenses. And of course, I mentioned the 9-member governing board that is elected by district. So can BART survive this unimaginable crisis? I'm going to spend a few slides showing you the financial picture of BART. A lot has changed this year, and BART faces some pretty severe financial distress. In just 3 weeks back in March, our largest revenue source, riders, was decimated by a virus. We are currently sitting at only 12% of our expected ridership after actually declining all the way to 6% ridership. Before that revenue fall, ridership was 55% of our normal operating budget revenue. Consumers stopped spending on everything but the essentials during the when the COVID first hit, and that has a great impact on sales tax, which is our second largest revenue historically, our second largest revenue piece. We're currently at 12%, as I said, in ridership, and that's about 15% of revenue. So what were the impacts of COVID-19 on BART? The FY21 budget was developed based on an overall ridership loss of 65% for fiscal year 21. That's our current budget year. Projected fare parking revenue losses total about $358 million for this year. Loss of sales tax proceeds were budgeted at $38 million. It's looking to me like that's going to push upward of maybe as high as $60 million for the year of loss. We've lost bridge toll revenues. People are not driving as much. We've lost gas tax, operating assistance funding, and we still don't know what will happen to the property tax revenue. Remember, our largest rebuilding funding source right now is from Measure RR that was passed by the voters in 2016. And so property tax, property values could impact that. $40 million in costs have been added to our operating budget for sanitation efforts to keep those trains as clean and sanitary as possible during this virus concern. And then, of course, social distancing also provides a challenge. We used to pack 200 people onto one train car, and now we are running a system where we attempt to keep everyone at 6 feet apart. So survival depends on a number of things. Continued federal, state, and local subsidies. We received $377 million from the CARES Act back, well, it was passed back in April. That funding has come into us over the last several months. The transit industry is advocating, actually just before I got on here today, there was a major presentation to Congress and a plea to the Senate and even the president, our federal leaders, for more subsidy to fund transit across the nation. They're looking for another $30 billion across the nation. The CARES Act provided $25 billion. So the survival also depends on reductions in service to meet demand. This is something that I've been trying to get my fellow directors on board with. Initially, when COVID hit, we reduced operating hours, and we now close the system. The last trains run out at 9 p.m. As opposed to 12 a.m., which was our prior closing time. In addition, we're opening at 8 a.m. on Saturdays and Sundays, which is later than we used to. We're running 30-minute headways on the trains instead of 15. So there's clearly a number of a large percentage fewer trains are being run at this time. But I believe that we have more to do, and I am attempting to try to convince our staff and our board that asking for federal, state, and local assistance is one thing, but we also have to be responsible managers of the system and look for ways to start cutting costs. That did not happen in the fiscal year 21 budget, where operating expenses actually went up by 6%. So survival also, it depends on cuts to operating costs, which I talked about. Much of that is labor, but that labor is not just frontline labor. It is labor at all levels. We have a very large management structure that is very expensive, and that pretty much everything has to be on the table as we work through these this financial crisis. We also have to continue the post-COVID cleaning protocols. Our BART staff has done a fantastic job of stepping up the game on the cleaning of the trains. Now, we're carrying a lot fewer passengers, so we would hope that we could get to a much cleaner level, but new technologies I'll talk about later have been put in place as well. So a real key to all of this is the San Francisco economic recovery. Right now, the demand at 12% ridership is based in a large part on the demand for people going to San Francisco from the outer areas, primarily the suburbs. And then the big question of the day that not a lot of people are talking about, but some are in high tech, is there really a place in the future post-COVID, after all this is over and we're not worrying about COVID anymore, is there a place for BART and mass transit in the new workplace model? We're seeing high-tech companies putting in place permanent programs for people to work from home, and they're telling their employees, you can be as far as 40 miles away from San Francisco, and we will allow you to remain employed in your position. And it's a new world in the workplace. So let's take a look at the BART numbers. I promise this is the last of the numbers that I will throw at you. This is a comparison of the fiscal year 20 versus the fiscal year 21 budget. We are now here. Rider revenue for 20's budget was projected to be 517 million. Clearly, we didn't meet that because the last quarter included the beginning of COVID. I'm still waiting for the final numbers on this to be able to update this. But we are now $358 million down in this current budget. Sales tax revenue went down by 38 million. State transit assistance revenue we project will be $11 million less. And then this is the budget deficit that was filled by the fiscal year 20 budget and then the fiscal year 21 budget. These numbers sort of shifted some as you see at the bottom here, the CARES Act funding was reduced by $39 million on just the second day of fiscal year 21. So operating expenses went from 800 million to 851 million. Most of that was due to labor contracts that staff did not take the steps to start to make concessions to or ask for concessions to. Labor and benefit costs alone went up 32 million, and capital allocations in this budget went from 100 million in fiscal year 20 to only 17 million. So in large part, this budget was, there's an $84 million plug of the whole just by not allocating operating capital to, operating income to the capital side. That's going to pose a problem down the line as we continue to run short on capital budget funding. So I'm going to go through some of the rebuilding. The good news is that the rebuilding is still underway and actually has been expedited. So with less hours of train travel, we are actually able to really push ahead on the rebuilding projects and expedite them. I'm hoping that turns into some capital budget savings. I've rolled out that question at the last meeting for the first time and didn't hear the answer I was expecting, but I will keep working on that part. But we have a whole core capacity project underway. The federal government is funding up to $1.2 billion of this project. It includes 4 parts: the additional rail car vehicles. We already have funded the replacement of the first 700 rail cars, but this program would provide another 300. And those cars are going to be needed when we replace the traction power and the train control, which will allow us to run more trains through the tube, the Transbay tube, at shorter intervals. So we will be able to expand the capacity with that. And then in order to add those additional vehicles, we also have a new rail car storage expansion project underway in Hayward. So infrastructure includes replacing trackway, tunnels, structures, mechanical systems. This is not the sexy stuff, but this is what Measure RR is paying for. In addition, there's $200 million in Measure RR for the study of the design and placement of a second Transbay tube. We call that 2.0. Actually, I'm supposed to call it a Transbay crossing because they haven't determined that it's actually going to be a tube. So let's talk about the fleet of the future real quick. We have 12 new 10-car trains now in service. Let's see, I think 2 to 3 of them on each line. We have 3 of them on the Concord and Antioch line. We have 203 new cars on site accepted, and new Bombardier rail car assembly site has been opened up in Pittsburgh for the assembly of these rail cars for the future. The complete replacement order is 775 cars, and it's expected to be up and running complete fleet replacement by 2024. So let's talk about rebuilding the rider experience. Let's face it, before COVID, riders were unhappy, and our rider satisfaction surveys were still going down. So, you know, there are a variety of quality of life issues that we have to address on BART. And this is where the biggest struggle has been in our board with respect to how to handle these things. So what are they? They are the homeless. They are the panhandling, the cleanliness issues. I think we've kind of gotten a good handle on the cleanliness with COVID. It is the crime, and then of course the drug use. Fare evasion remains a problem. And before I get to that, I just want to, you know, talk a little bit about these items here. There is one primary factor in all of these human behavior problems on BART, and it is known to be fare evasion. So, when we know some things about this, because just in my 4 years on this board, we've tried different programs within the police department to identify how we can stop fare evasion. By the way, BART loses between $30 and $57 million each year from fares that are not paid. So when fares are enforced, here's what we know. Crime does go down. Revenue goes up, not by the full 27 to 57, 30 to 57 million. It goes up by some percentage of that. Cleanliness improves, rider satisfaction goes up. And there's the revenue. It's actually 27 to 57. So what are the solutions? When I started at BART in January 2017, I was shouting two things. And I've continued to do that as I enter my 4th year now. After one thing is station hardening, and the other is to increase our police force. When I started, we had 47 vacant police officer positions out of 181. We have now filled, almost 4 years later, we've filled those 47. We added 19 new positions to the force in the fiscal year 20 budget. Those positions are still being filled, and we were supposed to have hired 19 more officers every year for 5 years. That has been brought to a halt. So I think my additional 19 for fiscal year 20 is going to be as much as we get for now until we solve some of these other financial problems. So station hardening, fare gate replacement, and more police presence. I've worked very hard on fare gate replacement. I did finally get staff to identify a product for fare gate replacement, and it is actually this fare gate right here that you see. It's used in other transit systems, and that was the best I could do. Honestly, I felt like this was a better solution in downtown San Francisco, but I didn't have the support of other directors or the staff in going to a system like this. So BART has a new welcome back plan, and they've worked very hard. The staff has worked very hard in putting together enhanced cleaning, health and safety measures, and service level matching. On the cleaning, each and every car is fogged every 24 hours. BART is using hospital-grade disinfectant in stations and trains. Train poles are wiped down with disinfectant at the end of the line. Station touch points are wiped down multiple times a day. And we are exploring new cleaning technologies continually. We are working to match the service level to the demand. You know, I've looked at some reports where 40 people used a station in an entire day. The BART staff is working very hard to make sure that the 6-foot social distancing is possible as we work our way through this. And in the mornings, we have now inserted, I believe, 4 trains on the Concord Antioch line in between the 30-minute headways. So the more trains we can run, we're running all 10-car trains. then the more spread out people can be, and the less chance of transferring the disease. So on the health and safety side, we have, I'm sorry, this is the first time I've done these slides. So on the health and safety side, we have hand sanitizer in every station. We are handing out masks everywhere. We're just giving them away. Station agents have them, police officers have them, our other personnel on the stations have them. Touchless payment systems are a great improvement. There are the personal hand straps, and the air in each rail car is fully replaced 50 times per hour. So we're looking to continually improve that environment. So let's talk about the technology. The Clipper cards are at about 91% utilization now. We are phasing out the old paper cards. If you have them, you can actually send them into BART, and they will give you they'll issue you a Clipper card with the same value on it. There are a number of discounts available. You must have a Clipper card to get those discounts. Seniors, disabled are at 62%, youth under 19 are at 50. We now have a low income program that is being funded by MTC at 20%, and quantity discounts are available if you load large quantities onto the card. These cards are like fast track. You can register them online, and you can attach a credit card to them, and they just keep reloading. So they're also good on other systems in the Bay Area. Homeless outreach, we have a Contra Costa COR team, Coordinated Outreach, Referral, and Engagement team. They're working to identify, engage, and connect persons experiencing homelessness to services like healthcare, social services, and housing. Currently, teams are in Contra Costa and San Francisco looking for funding for partnerships to expand in Alameda, San Mateo, and now Santa Clara counties as well. So transit-oriented development, I usually spend a lot on time on this for real estate groups, but this is the development of the parking lots into housing. The Walnut Creek project is underway. That will be probably the last transit-oriented development program that has any substantial amount of parking replacement done as a part of the program. All of the rest of the TODs going forward, particularly in the Berkeley and the 80 corridor, are looking at no parking replacement, and people will we will have to develop other ways to get to BART. So 19 completed and under construction projects, 6 under various phases of development, and another 250 additional acres at 27 stations that could accommodate future development. I will just tell you that there was a proposal for development at the downtown Concord station. That proposal is gone, and the development at the North Concord station seems to be stalled with respect to waiting on what happens at the Concord Naval Weapons Station, which is also stalled. So nothing going on right now in Contra Costa on this front. So rebuilding the organization, we have a new general manager executive team. He was hired 1 year ago. Bob Powers. We are working on internal process improvements. This is an area I spend a lot of my time on. And we have a new inspector general. I actually spent a tremendous amount of time on the hiring of a fantastic inspector general, Harriet Richardson, who we just need to find more money to fund her office. And so that's where my attention is now. We have a new BART headquarters actually the build out of the inside of it is underway. We should be moving into that in 1 year from now. And it looks like this. So that is the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take questions, and with whatever time we have left, and I probably went a little longer than I thought, but I think I'm going to let Sue mediate those questions.
I got it. You can take down your, there we go. Okay. The first question that came in was, we have a viewer that would like to talk about public safety and law enforcement during the COVID crisis. Basically, how has the incidence of crime changed during COVID, and how are they responding?
Yeah, so not as I had hoped. I don't have the specific numbers. Obviously, it's gone down some, but I would be expecting as a metric to look at crime as a percentage of riders at this point. And I can tell you that it has not gotten better really much. You know, the petty theft is better. The cell phone theft is better because there just frankly aren't that many riders on the trains. But I watch the logs every day. I get an email of how many arrests and you know, violations occurred. And it seemed to go way down there for a little while in May and June. And now I see that sort of ratcheting back up.
We had actually a couple of people asked, what financial benefit does BART get from TOD property developments?
That's a great question, and I'm still trying to figure that one out. I have been told consistently from staff that BART that this doesn't cost BART anything, but yet I do still see lost revenue. For example, our board voted, I opposed, but the rest of the board voted to grant 30% discounts now on the lease revenue to developers for adding a component of low-income housing into these projects. We know that low-income housing residents, from studies that will show that those residents actually ride transit less than market rate residents. And so not only are we giving developers a discount on the lease revenue stream, now remember, these are 99-year leases. This is, you know, generations of the future of BART that are being signed into agreements. And we're seeing really this board in particular has a mission to develop these parking lots into housing. And they, from my opinion, my personal perspective, I don't see that they care a whole lot about that revenue stream. When I first started, I was being told that the revenue stream was all about the lease revenue. That hasn't panned out, and it certainly didn't pan out in Walnut Creek. I've looked at those numbers, but now what I see in presentations and arguments for TOD is that it will increase ridership. And so there are analyses that show, I've looked at a few of them, I have more to look at. The analysis show ridership before and what somebody projects ridership will be over a long period of time because they are able to live next to transit. I don't think any of that has been really proven out, but these are just ways of you know, convincing people that the revenue will be greater than parking.
Okay. I have a comment and question here. Does the BART board not realize that if they take away the parking in the suburbs, that it'll make it so expensive that it's not economical to take BART and ridership will evaporate?
So you have the BART board being, really there are 5 urban directors who control the BART board, and there are a lot of 5-4 and 6-3 votes. The urban directors, frankly, don't really care about the suburban stations. And this is a battle that I have seen throughout the last 4 years. They are intent on a mission of developing these parking lots and putting housing in, but there's another intent there as well, and they are very concerned, these directors are very concerned about climate change, and they believe that eliminating cars, and I guess I can only guess that, you know, they believe the suburban areas should eliminate cars too, that will actually help our climate change scenario. The problem is in the suburban areas, we do not have the infrastructure to really be a carless community. That is really a long way off. We could get there, but they're sort of using a take it away and they'll figure out how to do something different approach. And I continue to oppose that, but I am quite outnumbered in that.
Okay. We have a question about the cleanliness and the sanitation. And I'm sure everybody appreciates the increased sanitation and cleanliness of the stations and the cars. Does that extend to the BART bathrooms? I know that's always a problem, and they've been awful for a long time. Are they doing more bathroom cleaning at the stations?
There's more cleaning going on everywhere at the stations. We do have the San Francisco stations have been the largest problem for the restrooms because they were closed back at 9/11. The restrooms actually sat directly underneath the railroad tracks. And so for security purposes, those restrooms were closed back then. And so all that people are left to in San Francisco are these sort of porta potty things up on the top street level. And so we actually have renovations underway in some of these stations that are going to rebuild the bathrooms in the San Francisco stations. And so that's a problem that will get solved as we go through the rebuilding and the renovation of these stations. But just the general cleaning, I hope, I'm not hearing any complaints about the restrooms, and I do go in the restrooms when I visit a station, and I think that we're doing a better job at it.
I have two, maybe three last questions. The first one is BART hearing any call for defunding the BART police?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. The answer is yes, absolutely. We lost the funding of 5 new police officers and 6 fare inspectors that were included in the budget for fiscal year 21 back in June. And at the last moment, some changes were made by board directors to scratch that off of the budget and take that money and use it for the ambassadors, the unsworn civilian ambassadors, which are essentially people who have no ability to enforce anything. They are a presence, and that does help in some cases. But really the only thing an ambassador can do is use their radio to call a police officer if there is trouble on the train. I prefer to have the teams of officers on the trains. There's a lot of disagreement on this topic among our board members. And so, you know, I kind of lost out on that. In addition, I mentioned 19 police officers should have been added in the fiscal year 21 budget. That was a result of a policing expert, a transit policing expert that gave us a presentation in 2018 who said that at that time, our 181 officers needed to be increased by 93 more to adequately patrol the system. The agreement that was made because of budget constraints was that we would add 19 each year for 5 years. So we did that in fiscal year 20. It's been nixed for 21. I'm not sure that we'll ever get that back in the near future. But in addition to that, next Monday, a special BART board meeting has been called to address an attachment that was made into, it's called an RCI, that was presented when we voted on the budget, that we will now start to develop a plan for converting some of the police officers' duties with respect to some of those quality of life issues I showed you on the screen, the homeless, the drug addiction, mentally ill people on the trains, that we will now convert that response into social worker type of unsworn people who will be trained to respond to those calls. So if you're on a train and there's a homeless person sprawled out and you call PD, they're going to send one of these social workers out. That is then combined with an RCI that we'll discuss in in October. We will be taking up the budget again. We'll be looking at where we're at with that. And that RCI includes direction to staff to look at the policing budget in October. So defund the police has not been used, that term, but add that all together and yes, it's a pervasive message in this.
And I think everybody's concerned that civilian type enforcement, we can only wonder if it's safe for these civilians who are virtually untrained and not used to that. You know, just protecting yourself with a walkie-talkie or a cell phone, it's not much protection.
Yes.
I have a question. With service down 88%, how has BART changed its headcount in response?
The actual working headcount has not changed. That's that 6% increase in operating expenses I mentioned from 20 to 21. No layoffs, no furloughs. All BART employees, except for a handful of top management people, received their contractual 2.75% raise on July 1st. That's not sustainable, by the way. And in the budget, discussion and our ultimate passing of the budget on June 25th, I proposed an amendment to simply cut back operating expenses by $51 million, which would bring it to a level point with fiscal year 20. And I asked, I proposed that, it was defeated.
Okay, I'm getting some notes that we're not getting good volume for some people. So I'll ask you to make your final comments and we'll wrap up.
So I want to just thank you all for listening and caring about BART. This has been an interesting journey in my life. You know, I was a CPA and an accountant, and then to go into all of this definitely has expanded a broad expansion of my knowledge of many of the issues that we face in society. But I have made a key decision over the last week that I am going to continue on, and I filed papers last Monday to run for re-election in November.
Well, Deb, thanks so much. I think Mike McGill, I can let him in because he's been having audio trouble. So Mike, did you have a question?
Well, I think Deborah just answered it. I wanted to make sure she was going to run for re-election. I mean, she's been doing such a great job, and I think we need her there. So thank you, Deborah.
You're welcome, Mike.
Thank you all. And with that, I'm going to have to close. We've reached our time. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Until the next time CoCoTax sees you. Many thanks to Deb. We could never have done this, get this much information anywhere else. And we appreciate your personal touch talking with us. So to everybody.
Can I say one more thing, Sue?
Yes.
I forgot to plug membership in the Contra Costa Taxpayers Association. It is so critical what you do in this organization. And I will tell you that this organization, when Chris Hunt was here, is what prompted me to fill out that first application many years ago, decades at least, to apply for a position on the CSERA pension board for the county. It was Chris Hunt who came to me and encouraged me to do that and get involved and be a part of what goes on in our society, and the rest is all history. So thank you, and I hope you all will pay that $75 and become a member of Contra Costa Taxpayers Association.
Thank you. We appreciate that. We need it. We've got a busy year ahead. So until the next time, I'll say to everybody, be happy, be healthy, and be well informed. Have a good day, everyone.